Today's episode is brought to you by Fulton, a modern brand of arch support. Fulton launched the most comfortable, supportive, and sustainable insole on the planet. Fulton insoles have a deep heel cup and comfortable arch support that aligns your body from head to toe. They're made using sustainable materials like vegan cactus leather and cork, allowing them to mold to the shape of your arch and provide customized support. They're also shock absorbing, reducing impact on the body, and are aligned with natural foam to make them extra comfortable. Now, as somebody who's on their feet literally 90% of the day, I can honestly tell you orthotics, insoles, whatever you want, however you look at it, arch support and having good shoes is so important to keeping your back from hurting and things like that. So, Fulton is offering our listeners $10 off their next purchase at walkfulton.com by using the promo code POD10. That's code POD10, POD10, for $10 off at walkfulton.com. You can check out their website and see how Fulton can support you. The podcast you are about to listen to contains at least one of the following: strong language, disturbing topics, abusive opinions, generally things that aren't appropriate for little kids or overly sensitive people. So, if any of that stuff's going to get your nose out of joint, this is your chance to turn it off.
It's time to feel the rage. Join us on Film Rage, where we talk movies, current releases, coming attractions, streaming, and classic films as well. Directors and actors beware, as you cannot hide from the rage. My name is Bryce, and I'm part of the Film Rage crew, which also includes Jim.
Hey.
And Murray.
Yo.
Why is it you always talk all the time? I can't understand why your voice is so...
This is the Merman, the voice of reason. These two can't agree on anything most of the time. Some movies are mondo, some are just suck. Every week something is going to make us rage. Join us every Wednesday and
feel the rage.
Welcome to I Had to Say It, the podcast where I talk about things that I feel need talking about, and sometimes they're not getting the attention they deserve. And your feelings, they're not under consideration. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Had to Say It. Joining me today is Dr. Katherine Sheffield from A Few Bad Apples podcast. I'm going to let her talk to you about what her show is about. And if you haven't paid attention to my show, I have recommended it more than once. You should really be listening to it anyway. So this should be kind of redundant. But for the people who don't know who you are, Doc, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everyone. I'm Katherine, and I am the host of A Few Bad Apples. And it's just a podcast that takes victim stories, people who've encountered negative encounters with police, and I highlight those stories, but then I also balance each episode with a positive police story, because the premise of the show is not anti-police, but pro-reform.
See, that's a very good thing. I completely endorse the entire concept. I'm pro-reform all day. I don't think they're all bad, but I've definitely encountered a couple of pretty rotten cops over the course of my career. It's just happens. But I know a lot of good cops too. I have friends that are police officers, and I totally support them because I know they're decent. They're not out there doing all the horrible things that would get them on one of your episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a balance anywhere you go. I think that there are always going to be bad ones, but I think that there are probably a lot more good ones. Unfortunately, the news and the media, we can blame them all day, but they really do highlight only the negative. And as of lately, like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I feel like it has only been negative. And it would be awesome if we could have more positive police stories in the news. But unfortunately, that's just not how they operate.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sad truth of the matter is, happy stories don't sell papers. Not that anything sells papers anymore, but the concept's sound.
Right. No, absolutely. I totally agree. I think the media really thrives on these issues, and what happens is it starts fueling a public protest. And because, I mean, and can you blame them? People get really fired up from what they're seeing, and it has just been really bad. And of course, we don't know the facts yet, all of the facts. We're just seeing the start of these problems in the last 3 weeks. So it would be interesting to see how they all unfold. But if it's really the way it's being portrayed, then it is very alarming. if it
Yeah,
really is.
yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's a lot going on out there. I think there's going to be a lot more coming. But on the other hand, I also agree that the media has got to be held accountable for it too, because they are hyperinflating certain aspects of it and sensationalizing certain things that probably shouldn't be, because it makes for a better headline. It's not necessarily objectively accurate or even fair always, because you can't have a story without a bad guy. I mean, otherwise there's nothing to sell.
Yeah,
And
and it's sad. It's
yeah,
actually sad that they're capitalizing on those unfortunate events. I mean, someone's life was lost regardless of what they did. And then they just really hone in um on those details, which, creates this mass wave of hysteria because people are just like, or enough is enough every single day.
appreciate the way you handle it, where you have the good Apple stories, and there's, because like I said, I know some police officers personally. I respect them because they voluntarily go do a job that people hate them for, that they're not getting, any kind of public support these days. And because they're generally good people and they want to help, and they want to stop people from doing dangerous and stupid things. And they willingly take a job where getting killed is in the job description, like as a potential outcome of your doing your job. And
Yeah.
I have to admire that, because, I mean, granted, anybody could snap anywhere, anytime. But like back in, like say the '90s, it used to be the exception, not the rule. That, like, oh yeah, people used to make jokes about people going postal because one guy went crazy in a post office and shot a bunch of people. And it just, back then it was more like, okay, well, so you don't want to work at the post office because you might get killed too. And that could realistically happen just about anywhere, but it's not expected. It's not something you're prepared for. It's not a possibility of, I mean, none of us are promised tomorrow, but at the same time, I don't put on my coat and go to work in the morning thinking, yeah, well, somebody might come into the office and plug me today. I mean, I'm more inclined to think I might slip in the kitchen and hurt myself or something, but that's on me. That's not it's not a this is a factor of your job. You may die today.
Yeah,
It's
no, definitely. I mean, I work at the schools. I'm not going to go in there every day fearing for my life. But I mean, knowing that it has happened several times within, recently, I still don't want to think that way. I don't want to live my life focusing on the negative. And I think that's the unfortunate thing about our cultures. A lot of it is just based on negative, things. We're just driven on those negative things.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a kind of a sad state of affairs, really, because if we all looked at the positives, we'd probably all be a little happier. I mean, just as a matter of a state of being.
Yeah.
and and I don't know why more people don't want to do that. It seems like people want to be pissed off and unhappy and negative all the time, and I don't get the mentality myself. And I'm not exactly a rainbows and sunshine kind of person myself, but I still want to be happy. I don't want to be miserable all the time. And
Right.
people seem to enjoy it. It's like, I
I
don't
mean,
get
I
it.
can be a grouchy pants at times, but
Oh,
but I do try to like think, okay, I mean, my situation probably sucks, but I'm sure someone out there has something worse. And so that's what keeps me grounded. And I realize, I don't really have it that bad. So like, what the hell am I complaining about?
exactly. I mean, I'm not living in some war torn. I mean, to hear the news tell it these days, I'm actually pretty close to a couple war torn areas, but I'm not worried about getting pressed into service for, some local militia, and if I don't do it, they're going to murder my entire family. I mean,
Right.
that's a very real situation for some people in this world, and it's sad, but
Right. And I walk out the door and I'm in Hawaii. So
the whole, hey, look, it's paradise outside. And
yeah, that's
I know it's not perfect, but
no. I mean, it's no place is, but I mean, I definitely have the aloha vibes, which makes living a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, actually my kid brother lives in Hawaii too.
That's awesome.
He's he's on Oahu, I think he said.
That's where I live.
Sounds right. Okay, well then he's on the same island you are somewhere.
I probably
Um,
met him at one. No, just kidding, because it's not that big.
it's not huge from what he was saying, but
No.
it's yeah. They just moved out there actually like right at the start of the pandemic, so
Oh, wow.
they got out there and then couldn't leave the house for 14 days. So
Oh, yeah,
it
yeah.
was they were like, yeah, we can't even go down to the port and pick up all our stuff because they moved from Washington to Hawaii and they shipped all their stuff on a cargo, like in a cargo
Is he in the
container. So
military?
not anymore. He
Oh,
used to be in the Navy years ago, but
okay. It's a big move. It really is. And it's so hard to move here because I left my husband is in the army, so we moved from Germany to here. And so that in itself was a crazy task. And trying to get our dog over here was crazy. You had to they do mandated quarantines for your dog, and that was before COVID. Like they do
yeah,
that because they don't want to have rabies come on a small island and then spread like wildfire. So
yeah.
trying to get our dog here, trying to get, oh my gosh, it was a nut roll.
I can imagine. I mean that yeah, it's just based on the little bit I do know about the process. It sounded like very involved. I was like, yeah, I might come visit, but that's I'm gonna
Oh yeah.
wait till I don't have to spend 2 weeks hanging out in the house after I come visit to come visit. So,
Well, no, all you need is a COVID test, negative COVID test, and you're good.
oh well, that's
Yeah.
that's good. I don't have COVID. I know that, so I'm okay.
Well, they
That's
won't believe you, so no, my mom's coming, so I'm, like, stressed out, I'm like, "Okay, we gotta get you gotta do this because you don't wanna be stuck in your hotel," and what they're doing here is if you do come from another state, they will and you're or if you're visiting or staying at a hotel and you don't have a COVID test, they won't give you a key to your room, and if
oh
they find out that you
jeez.
leave, you will get the police called on you because we have seen it on the news. Like people have you cannot leave your room and they like once you close the door, you're done.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's yeah. Well, I mean, it's understandable though. It's like you said, it's a small island. It's a contained population. You don't want. I mean,
yeah.
that's you don't want an outbreak. It's
No. I mean, ours is pretty good. I think we're fortunate to live here of all places because they really cracked down like from the get-go, which was made me feel made me feel good but a little annoyed. Like you have to wear your mask outside at the beach. It's like, really? I'm just with my
it's
husband and my kids.
yeah. It's like they're not any more exposed here than we are at home.
Right, right. Yeah.
That's that's one of those things where they're like, I kind of the whole outside mask mandate thing. I'm not opposed to the protective measures to try and curb the spread of this whole thing, and I'm not a rabid anti-masker. I actually, there are times where I really enjoy having a mask on
Me
because
too.
it kind of covers my expression when I'm dealing with people. So
Me too.
I'm just like, ugh. But apparently, I carry a lot of disdain in my eyes too, so it only helps so much. I so, somebody else said that to me. They're like, I can tell you're annoyed even with the mask, and I'm like, well, yeah. How can I say? I'm an open book,
But you're only
but
seeing one half of my face, you know?
yeah, you're not seeing the sneer that goes along with the eyeballs. So, there,
Yeah, really. And
of course,
that's funny because I typically feel like a pretty friendly person, but, like, I can smile with my eyes, but be scowling with my lips. I'm like, "Thank God this mask on because you will see my face cringing right now."
yeah, I I'm kind of the other way. I'm pretty friendly, but apparently I look kind of like surly and standoffish when I have the male equivalent of resting bitch face, according to some people, because you just look crabby. I'm like, well, you're not wrong. I mean, I'm awake. I'm wearing pants. I'm not happy. So, because
I'm out in public.
Yeah, I have. That's one of those things. Like people ask me, "Hey, how you feel about being back to work?" And I know the last few months must have been rough on you. Well, yeah, they were, at least from a financial aspect. And I found a lot of stuff to keep myself occupied, like starting this podcast. But for me, the big thing is I've never been a big fan of pants. This is the hill I'm going to die on. I am really disappointed that I have to wear pants out in public. Not that I want to be like just naked, but I like if I'm not somewhere where I have to look professional, I'm wearing shorts or shorts basically. That's pretty much it. And or if I'm in my house and I'm not bothering anybody and all the windows are closed, boxers. That's pretty much the extent of I like I'm one of those people. I'm always hot. I like to be comfortable. I don't
Yeah.
like pants. If I could get away with it, I would wear kilts everywhere.
You know what's
But
so funny? When the pandemic hit, I heard on the news that like shirts at like Walmart or like, I guess Walmart's a popular clothing vendor, but their shirts like skyrocketed. People were just buying shirts. And they were like, that means that a lot of people are not wearing pants because they're at home on their Zoom meetings and they're just like, I'm wearing a cool shirt, but I'm literally,
yeah, like yeah, no,
I
it's
thought that was
it's
hilarious.
yeah. I don't know. I'm all for it. I'm team no pants all day. Like I said, I if I could get away with it, unfortunately, it's in my situation. It's more of a safety thing, working in the food
Yeah.
service side of
Yeah.
things.
Please
So
wear pants when you're dealing with
yeah,
food.
yeah. I mean, I did work in one kitchen when I was like in my 20s, where the kitchen literally got to be about 115 degrees on an
Whoa.
average day. During the summer, it would get up to almost 125. Like, and just the ventilation was terrible. We had a back door and we would prop two box fans in it, one facing in, one facing out, just to
Yeah.
circulate the air. And it was still in the over 110 degrees every day. And the chef was like, I don't care, you guys can wear shorts, it's hotter than hell in here. And most of us did, until one day a guy had a pan explode on him and splattered
Oh.
grease all over his legs, and we were just like, ah, pants are
Oh
coming
my God.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
literally the next day everybody came in wearing a pair of like checkered kitchen pants. We didn't plan it, we didn't coordinate it, we all did it. We all came in the next day full coverage. Like, nope, not going through that sucked. And
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, that's one of my favorite jobs as far as like stories go, where like every kitchen nightmare story I have comes out of that one job. Because it was a fantastic job. It was a great place to work. It was really fun. But I worked with a couple of the dumbest, well, dumb may not be fair, but careless people I've ever worked with, where they would cause situations that jeopardized everybody else that was working there. I got deep fried, like literally deep fried my right arm because of them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that sucked. I had like second and third degree burns
Oh
all the
my
way down
God.
my arm.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, and it completely healed, no scars.
Wow.
But yeah, I took a ridiculous amount of care of it, and apparently I heal pretty well because over the course of my 42 years of life, I have I have two scars on like my entire body, and one of them's where I cut the tip of my thumb off and then like super glued it back on. And the other one, yeah, I have problems.
I was like,
I
your wounds sound worse than mine. When I worked at McDonald's when I was 17, I got like a burn of the fry basket. For some reason, I like grabbed it and it swung back, and I had like a grill
oh
mark, like a fry basket mark on
yeah.
my arm.
Well, I've had a few of those. I had one of the places I worked, actually the same place. One of the guys was he deep fried a pair of tongs because he wasn't paying attention. They were in the fry basket, and he dumped fries in and dropped it into the
Oh my
fryer.
gosh.
And then he picked it up and he dumped it into the fry like holding spot. And he was in the weeds, and actually at that point I was the chef, and I came around the line to come help him get caught up with all the plates he had to get done. And I saw the tongs in the fries, and I figured they were in there to grab some fries, and I grabbed the tongs by the handle, and I burned like a V into the palm of my hand, and
Oh,
it took like 3 months to heal. It was pretty bad. And
wow.
like I like fried all the nerves in my hand. I couldn't feel heat sensation for like about 5 years, like at
Wow.
all. That was after I got deep fried. It caused nerve damage, and it was funny because I actually started working in a culinary school after that happened. Not like in a professional capacity, more like a TA kind of.
Mhm.
And occasionally I would do stuff just to mess with the culinary students. Like we'd be talking, and I'd lean on the flat top with my hand that was like heat dead, because I knew in my mind how long I could do that before it would damage it, but I couldn't feel it. And a lot of chefs will have like calluses on their hands from knives and all this other stuff. So I would sit there until like my calluses would start smoking, and they'd be like, "Dude, yeah, that happens. Sorry," and just freak the kids out. What is wrong with you? Well, nothing. Didn't feel a thing. Jeez.
Because your hand's already been burned so many times.
Yeah, and that's what I told them. I was like, and the ironic thing is, at the time I was like all of 24, but in my wisdom of dealing with all these kids fresh out of high school that were freshmen in the culinary
Yeah.
program, now I'm like, just relax, children, everything will be fine. That smug early 20s attitude when dealing with teenagers.
Yeah.
And and it
Oh,
was just
I
like,
work at. I'm a high school teacher. I know all about it.
yeah, I was just like, I'm sure you've had to see that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it was, looking back, I was just God, I was cringy. Like, why did you do these things to those poor kids? It's like, well, I was trying to warn them. This is what happens to you if you enter this line of work. You turn into me.
Well, I think that's a good lesson for them to know, like
Oh yeah,
realistically, because I think all schools do this. We prepare them for the general, like,
yeah,
reading and writing, and like in your case, the rules, the protocols, but you're not telling them, hey, you might deep fry your arm.
yeah. You're gonna wind up with stitches at some point. You're
Yeah.
going to you're going to do
But
something
it's such an
dumb.
important job. I think, food industry is so important in hospitality and all of that because I mean, it's everywhere, every single place you go. And I do think like that's essential. Those lessons are really valuable for them.
Well, yeah, and particularly like the safety side of things, because I mean, I try not to overstress these things when I'm talking to people outside the industry, just because I don't like to put that mindset into people's heads. But I particularly with certain family members, if I get a lot where they're like, "How do you go out to restaurants and not freak out because you know everything that can be going wrong in the back of the house?" And I'm like, I go out to restaurants and I don't freak out, and I relax and enjoy my meals because I'm not the one making them. Because I
Right.
have enough faith in the people that are in the back of the house that they're not going to screw up. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's
and
the
if you go
difference
to a good
between me and
place,
you. Oh
if you
yeah,
go to a really good restaurant, they're not going to let someone screw off and mess around.
yeah. Well, I mean, well, they might, but it'll be contained.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
That's
can have fun while you're doing your job, but you're not going to go
yeah,
like, hey, let me close my eyes and try to chop an onion or something.
yeah. Well, that's not. Yeah, you're not gonna have to worry about like the likelihood of like finding a fingertip in your
Yeah.
food is not real high. That's actually my wife watches a lot of like true crime stuff and things like that, and one of the shows she watches this morning when I was making breakfast, she had it on, and they were talking about a few years back when the lady was suing Wendy's because she found a fingertip in her chili,
Oh,
and it turned out that she was like a con artist. She was trying to defraud.
they get
She
money.
Yeah, she sued him for like $1 million or something like that because she found a human finger in her chili. And like basically, as soon as they brought it up, I remember when it happened. It was early 2000s, and I remember when it happened, and I was just like, "There's literally no friggin' way that finger got in that chili because I know people that work at Wendy's. Like when I was in high school, I had friends that worked at Wendy's. They used to hook me up. I'd go I'd go hit the drive-through on my way home from work, and I'd be like, "Hey, you guys are closing in 20 minutes. How much throw-out food you got tonight?" And and my buddy'd be like, "Well, I got some chickens you can have," and so I'd buy like 2 cheeseburgers, and then they'd have like 4 chicken sandwiches that they couldn't do anything with that was going to go in the trash. And he'd be like, "This, I'd spend $6 and get a bag the size of my head. Just, here you go." And so, but I know for a fact that like when Wendy's makes their chili in house, it's not like it's shipped in from a big distribution place.
Yeah.
Which that really limits the possibility of a human finger winding up in that chili without somebody knowing about it.
Yeah, was it? I was gonna say, if someone got their finger cut off, wouldn't they like go to the hospital? Wouldn't they have a workman's
Oh,
comp report or something
yeah,
like that?
there's all kinds of stuff in place to deal with that. Not to mention the food would get thrown out.
Yeah.
So,
Oh
and they
yeah, exactly. Like my fingers in the chili. Oh, let's serve it. That's ridiculous.
yeah, and so this lady, and she was, I mean, it turned out to be she was trying to, like I said, she was trying to defraud and sue Wendy's. And Wendy's wound up countersuing because they lost something like $21 million worth of revenue because of this lady going on the news and talking about how traumatized she was that she found a finger in her chili. And it turned out to be, it was like one of her husband's coworkers got his finger cut off because they worked with heavy machinery, and he brought it in and he was like showing the finger to a bunch of his coworkers, and he owed her husband some money, and he was like, "Well, dude, give me the finger and we'll call it even."
Oh my god, I did not know about this. The end of this story. I heard about the finger. I think
Yeah,
that
no,
is wild.
yeah, she brought some random guys, and apparently she cooked it a little bit at home before she,
No.
so she would try and
God.
convince people it was in the chili. So she like simmered it with some seasonings and stuff.
Oh my
And
god, that's so disgusting.
yeah, but that actually just made her case that much worse because yeah, she seasoned it up a little bit, so she was thinking, okay, this looks like it was cooked in the chili now. But the way they make their chili and the way most places that make these things, it's like a long cooking process. It simmers for like 3 or 4 hours. And the way my brain works is when I heard about this story, 20 years ago or whatever it was, 15 years, it was my brain said, okay, there's not a lot of protein on a bone like a finger joint. If this finger was simmering in that pot for any length of time, like it was actually cooked in the chili, it would all fall, all the skin and the meat of the finger would fall off, and it would be bones and
Can I
like
just
maybe a
say I never
fingernail.
want chili again?
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I don't want a mystery meat chili.
Well, no, that's kind of my point. Is something like that really
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah, no, I
happen
know.
where it would just it wouldn't work. And so that's like as soon as I heard the story, I was just like, that's bullshit. She
Well,
is
you know what's so
lying.
funny? I mean, this
And
has nothing to do with the finger, but I was telling my students about we were in the unit where we were like talking about instructions and how thorough they have to be. And I was like, every single time you go to Starbucks or McDonald's and you order something, it has to have a caution, like extremely hot warning, because that one lady that spilled it on her crotch ended up suing and winning.
yep,
And they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Every single thing out there has an instruction because some person, some idiot did something dumb and ended up suing, and now there's a liability." And so they were fascinated. I said, "I want you to take a look
yep,
around, like around your community and see where you find instructions." And they came back and they're like, "Oh
yeah,
my God, you're right. There's instructions on everything."
yeah. It's they corporations protecting themselves
Yep.
because somebody did something dumb, just like you said. Like the silica gel packets. This is the one that's always been my personal hang up. You see do not eat, and it's on. You order some
Yeah.
piece of
Yeah.
electronics, and there's silica gel packets in there to keep it from, or or your new shoes. I found them in shoes. I found them in,
Right.
I mean, all sorts of random things. And I've always said to myself, what kind of person orders a pair of shoes or orders some piece of electronics and went, oh look, they gave me free candy. I, I don't know. And the fact that they have to put that on there, I'm kind of the mindset where it's like, some of the things that are wrong with the world today, I think could be remedied real easily if we just took the warning
Oh
labels
yeah.
off of everything and just kind of let nature work its course a
Survival
little
of the
bit.
fittest.
I mean, exactly. If you're the kind of person that thinks I should eat this package of stuff that came in my shoe,
Right.
maybe you should. I mean, sounds
And
kind
the
of
Tide
mean, but at the
Pods
same
and
time, I'm like,
the dishwasher tablets and all of
oh,
that. But what was my hang up was the one who the person who, this was way when like cruise control started. They pushed cruise control and they went to go to the back of the car to take a nap or whatever because they thought the car was going to drive itself. And then they ended up spinning and winning. And I
I,
told my students that, and they were just like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, guys. Like, you are growing up in a world where people are our test dummies out there."
yeah, very much so. I I had
Yeah,
forgotten about
that
that
was
one.
my hang up.
Like,
24/7.
yeah,
I always think about that one person who thought that the car was gonna do it all, and they can go take a nap, and this is the
yeah,
Jetsons, and nothing bad will happen.
yeah. And ironically enough, now we're actually almost to that point where they're
Oh, yeah, the
testing the self
Amazon
driving
thing
cars
where
now.
yeah, it's picking people up and it's dropping them off.
Yeah, I mean,
How do you feel
I don't know.
about that?
I have I have very
Right?
mixed feelings on the subject. Part of me's part of me's like, yeah, having those extra features built into vehicles could be helpful. I don't think it's necessarily something people should be relying on, though. I mean, I'm all for like a car that's smart enough to, like, say
Yeah,
an
yeah.
impaired driver gets behind the wheel, and a car that'll keep them from running into somebody else. I
Yeah.
think is a fantastic thing. But on the other hand, I don't know that I would necessarily be able to like take a nap in the back of a self-driving car. Like, oh, it'll get me where I gotta go.
Well, at that
I
point,
don't
it
know.
wasn't a self-driving car. It was a car you were supposed to be monitoring and operating.
Yeah, so you can
Right.
take your foot off the gas.
Yeah.
It's not gonna get you where you like cruise control. Okay, I want to go to
Yeah.
Paramus. Here you
I'll
go.
be chilling. I'll be chilling. Let the
No,
car do the job. It's wild. I just think, oh my gosh. I mean, we laugh about it, but unfortunately, somebody's out there getting hurt. I'm not laughing at them, but it's the idea that we're just experimenting. Like, hey, let me eat these gel beads.
yeah. Hey, these keep my shoes from getting moldy. I wonder if they'll help my intestinal issues.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. No, okay, bottoms
Right.
up there, bud.
Right. And
Yeah.
the tapeworm
Oy,
diet. I mean,
oh,
that's disgusting. We're not
I
even
remember
going
that one
there.
too. No, no, please. Speaking as someone who's
No,
actually
no,
seen a
no.
tapeworm.
I
No,
opened up that
no.
can of worms. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's no. I mean, not that I've had
No,
one
but I mean,
personally, but I
people
do.
were
That's
deliberately
what.
trying to do that to lose weight. Let me
Yeah,
infect
trying
my
to.
body and have a
So,
parasitic, you know, invader in my body.
yeah, yeah. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not particularly thrilled with the shape I'm in, and I've made no qualms about it. I'm pretty sure it's a matter of public record that I need to lose like an entire human being. Um, and not a small human being either. I mean, I need to lose like a full, 6 foot guy worth of weight. But um, yeah, I would never
No.
give myself a parasite. they're called poison.
People are just God bless.
Yeah, I mean, old folks and fools, I guess. But yeah, I don't understand the mentality, but I guess I don't really have to just be a little forgiving and say, okay, maybe there's a reason you're like this. But then other days I have my more cynical moments where I'm like, you know what? You're going to be an
Yeah.
episode. You just set me
Yeah.
off. and and honestly, yeah, that's realistically one of the things that got my show started was going, yeah, you know something? I got a lot of things I want to complain about. and it was actually really interesting. I mean, it's not like I have this huge audience or anything, but like the when I did start actually getting some traction out, like I suffer from really terrible imposter syndrome. Like I, people tell me like, "Oh, hey, I listened to that episode," and I'm like, "Really? Okay," because I don't know. Part of me in the back of my mind still thinks it's like my mom with 37 fake accounts, like
Yeah.
listening to every episode. And honestly, from a factual standpoint, I've spoken to her. I know she really doesn't listen too much because she's like, "You really got to cuss so much." I mean, like my stepdad listens. I think he just kind of gives her the Cliff Notes versions of like, "Hey, here's what Aaron was complaining about today."
That's funny.
But 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 a lot of it was just all these instances of me going, "I cannot believe this happens," and then ranting and raving for a little while and making an episode out of it, and then having people be like, "Dude, I'm so glad to hear somebody else actually say that." And like, well, maybe if we all said it a little more often, it would stop
Right. No,
happening,
I
you
agree.
know?
It's an
Which
unfiltered
was,
way to get what's
yeah,
off your chest. And I mean, I'm sure many people will agree, and there will, of course, be some that don't. Just like my show, I was afraid when I started it that, like, people were gonna be upset, and I thought actually my friends and family were gonna be the ones going, "How awful, like, why would you do this?" And but then they saw that I'm coming from a really genuine place and trying to just put real facts out there. It's not like I'm saying, "Hey, I think this, I think that," you know? And people were, like, really, really well receiving, and I was shocked. I was like, "Wait, there's this is crazy because it's blowing up."
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm a fan personally, so it's like, yeah, the way you present the things, you're not loading a lot of bias and a bunch of like, trying to tell people what they should think about it. You're presenting the facts as they exist and going, here, use your head,
Exactly.
make up your
And
mind,
that's kinda
which,
what I wanted to do. Sometimes,
yeah,
you almost sympathize for the person. Because I mean, I know for the guy who and this was in the 1st season, the Boren family, he annihilated his family and then he committed suicide.
yeah,
I know I sympathized with him at some point because he had a really, really horrible upbringing. And I just presented the
yeah,
facts. Now, was he a likable guy? No. But I mean, if you look at the overall picture, you're like, okay, this guy had a really shitty hand dealt to him, you know?
yeah, yeah. And honestly, the system kind of failed him, for lack of
Right.
a
But
better
then,
way
of
of putting it.
course, the
I
police
mean,
department.
but then he got in a
Well,
position.
they even had
Yeah,
their reservations about him. They were like, there's some things about him, but they overlooked it. So I mean, if you look at that whole story, you're like, okay, this problem probably wouldn't have happened if somebody would have said, "No, you're actually not fit for this job."
yeah, and that's another unfortunate thing about the system, and one of those, like I've said, I mean, we're both very very staunch supporters of reform, and part of the problem though is, and it's going to be getting compounded and get worse, at least in my opinion, is that with the current attitude about police officers and that line of work and those people in general, they kind of got to take what they can get, which compounds these
Mhm.
issues because there's not exactly, a line of people beating the door down going, let me take all this abuse and all this public hate in the name of
Yeah,
doing good. So instead, you get these people that want the power and they want to be able
right.
to be shitheads.
I remember us talking about that guy, Joe Glenowitz. Remember that Glenowitz episode? He was the officer who was yeah, I remember, I mean, like, but if you look at him, he portrayed himself as wanting to do good, working with those kids, and then he's like embezzling. It's just like, I really feel like there are people who are aware of the bad that's happening, but they turn their eyes towards it, away from it, and they are like, I don't see it. And they let it go and it festers. And then we have these problems where people are getting shot with their hands up when their hands are up. And that's the problem. I think that's the problem. I think we had too many people who were complacent, didn't want to step up, make a change, or say, hey, I'm going to be the whistleblower. I'm going to report this person. And that's my own opinion. But I really, from all the research that I've done, it feels like there has always been somebody there in the background knowing what's going on.
Yeah, and it's well, it's like you said. I mean, the culture needs to be reformed. It needs to be adjusted. They need to. It needs to stop being stigmatized to call out the
Yeah.
bad guys, and that and a few of the officers I know that I've talked to, and um, just putting this out there. If there are any officers that happen to hear this and you want to talk and you want
Yeah.
to come on the show and give your perspective, let me know.
Or let me know.
um, but or let Doc know.
Yeah.
Either way, yes, we'd both be happy to talk to you and give you a chance to put your side of things out there. Because, like I said, the guys I know that I've talked to, they want to see reform too. And I've a couple of my friends I've actually talked to where we've had that conversation where it's like, if you know something, is this guy's bad news, and he's, why is it so hard for you guys to, why does everybody hate internal affairs? Why does everybody seem to think this is a problem of calling a shithead guy
Yeah.
out for being a shithead? And yeah, but it's a very real thing that in that community, if they think it's almost like being a
Right.
prison snitch. I mean, the other prisoners don't respect snitches and they don't trust them, and if you get a reputation in the police department for ratting on somebody who's doing something they shouldn't be doing in the
Yeah, I
first place,
saw
you're treated
that
the
in the
same
Buddy
way.
Boys episode,
And
even though that took place in the 70s and the early 80s. They were really, really like almost bully like to when they suspected somebody. So one guy, I guess it was a family of police officers. One guy's brother was at another substation and he was known as a rat, and it affected the other guy who's at a different station because they knew that they were related and they did not trust him. So when he started, they even would pat him down and like, are you wearing wires? So I mean, they did not trust him, and it's a culture of uh, you know boys in blue, and that's how they created that buddy boys thing. And I understand it. There's like this camaraderie that no one's really going to understand on the outside world because you guys do the same job, you guys talk the lingo, you know everything, the ins and outs, and you do not want to be known as a snitch. And I understand that totally. Same thing as a gang member though.
yeah, I mean, it really it is very similar. I mean, it's just a
What
matter
side
of
are you on? Yeah. Hmm.
which side of the line you're
Right.
on. But yeah, no, that's a very
I
very
mean,
valid point.
I in no
Uh,
way am insinuating police officers are gang members or have that, mentality.
oh
But
no,
it's but
it's
it's a
just
matter of loyalty,
no,
I
I
guess. We
get
can
what you're
just go
saying.
down and say it's just a matter of loyalty, and if you are considered, somebody who's willing to open up and say something, you're definitely betraying that trust and loyalty. But on the other hand
Yeah,
on the other
that's a good
hand,
way of
though,
putting it.
and this is just me because I might be have a good moral compass. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I think I do. But I would say if you see something wrong and this person's out there protecting and serving, I mean, you also signed up to protect and serve. And if you should be that person, and there should be a safe place for you to be able to anonymously say, "Hey, I saw something. I don't want to put my name on anything, but please look into this and leave it to someone else."
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you signed up to protect and serve, and you're upset that somebody's calling you out for
Right.
violating your oath or being a scumbag. That's really I don't understand the mindset of being upset about that. If anything, I mean, like I said, the guys I know, when something comes up where there's an officer who gets outed for being a scumbag or whatever, they're the first ones just sitting there yelling, "Throw the book at them," because they're pissed off that they're getting a bad reputation because of
Hmm.
something this guy did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know a lot of the
Definitely.
officers feel that way, but at the same time, it's
Yeah.
still that culture of, it's us versus them, and we need. I think that's the part they
Right.
need to kind of work on. Is
Yeah, from
yeah,
within. The reform needs to
and
start from within. But also I think we need to define what does reform look like, but I mean, you and I are not going to hash that, but I think that's the first step. We always say we need
yeah,
reform, but what does reform actually mean and to you and what does it look like? I think that should be the first starting question.
yeah. No, I completely agree. That's actually one of my issues I have with all these people that are out here
Mhm.
screaming about defund the police or I've said it more than once, and I take no issue with people finding out where I stand on things, and I've called it out a couple of times actually, where it's I won't ever get behind like the all cops are bastards or any of that other stuff because they're not. At the end of the day, they're all just people, just like the rest of us, trying to do a really stressful, shitty job, and there are some really stressful, shitty people doing that job. But these people that are screaming about defunding the police and get rid of all of them and tear it all down, they all have a lot of anger, and from a certain extent, it's understandable. Uh, Particularly, I take a lot of issue with people that through, I mean, through no necessarily not through any fault of their own, but like through their own status of not having to deal with the issues they're bent out of shape about, but feeling the need to tell everyone else how to feel about these things. But they have a lot of opinions and a lot of
Mhm.
this is what's right and this is what's wrong, but they don't offer any
Right.
solutions or any alternatives. Tear the system down, but no ideas about how to fix it or
I
how to
don't think
restructure it.
okay, I mean, maybe in 40 years, if someone had a clear-cut path that we don't need police, okay, whatever. At least have a plan. But I mean, just try to rip them out now. Like, let's see how that really flies.
Yeah. Well, actually, you could look at Minnesota if you want to
Yeah.
see how
Well,
that's
and that
working
and
out
then there
because
was a section of
it's
Seattle that was, the defunded zone. I don't know what the term was called. But I mean,
yeah,
uh I know that I
yeah, that
would
fell apart.
personally not wanna live there if I did that, and I'm not saying that I'm putting my trust 100% in police, but knowing that there might be some law and order in the town I'm living in is a reassuring fact, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, the whole well, we don't have any ideas how to fix it, but we know it's broken mentality is. I mean, it's
Yeah,
dangerously widespread at this point,
it
in my
is.
opinion, because, like I said, it's and like that, like you said, that area where they set up the
Yeah,
no cop zone or whatever in Seattle, and they tried to make it this ideal anarchist collective or whatever it was they were calling it, which I mean, honestly, in my mind, I'm something of an anarchist myself, but not in any of the ways that are portrayed by the media or any of this other stuff, because the idea behind that of the no centralized government kind of thing does not remove accountability or responsibility. And the problem is, I think as a society, we're just not mature enough to live like that. And it pretty much was shown by that little group of people, and it was a remarkably solid swatch of a bunch of people that grew up privileged, benefiting from all the things they were complaining about, that allowed them to develop the mentality of this is how we want to do these things. They grew up safe and secure and didn't have to constantly worry about their own safety, so they didn't think they needed cops or organization or government or anything else. And I just think it kind of shows in how quickly everything fell apart.
well, it was an interesting social, I would say, experiment, but I mean, would our entire country thrive on that? No, I don't think so. There's just too much going on. But I do think there should be
Yeah.
a good balance between, um, like what the public knows about what the police's practices are, or, I think there needs to be a better line of transparency. And I'm actually going to be talking about that. Oh, I just talked about it in my previous episode, but transparency I think is important, and mental health. And there's so many things we could start with, but at first, I don't think ripping police out of every community across America is the answer.
Oh no, I completely agree with you. And I'm glad you brought up transparency too, because yeah, transparency would go a long way in alleviating a lot of this stuff instead of making any informational requests involving any kind of government stuff is such a it's an obstacle course. It's not designed
Yeah.
to be easy to navigate. They don't want
Hmm.
information available, and that mentality is going to have to change if they want to maintain any sort of presence without. I mean, the population. A lot of it, I think, a lot of it gets written off because and I think part of it's being overhyped by the media, and it's a lot of they try and capitalize on saying it's for marginalized individuals who are not having a voice, and they're all getting fed up. But then when you look at the actual demographics of the people that are involved in this, as often as not, it's a bunch of extremely privileged, well, for lack of a better word, kids. Because I haven't seen a lot of rioting and looting by people that are my age, because that shit looks
Yeah.
exhausting. And, that's kind of been my perspective on it is, again, kind of going back to the whole media coverage, but yeah, there is a lot of people that are fed up, but the ones that are going to actually affect any kind of real change, shy of going out and destroying a bunch of stuff, are they still want a lot of the same things. They want that
Yeah.
transparency. The people that know things are accomplished through money and maneuvers, and they're going to start going after funding and things like that, and maybe actually trying to get some political reform on the matters as well. They're not the ones that are out there burning stuff, but they have the same questions that need to be answered. We need to see what's going on and
Yeah,
why
and
are
that's
things
why
this
they
way.
implemented like body cameras and stuff like that. But a lot of times, and I've seen this in several episodes, the body cameras are off. So what was the point of it? Or or if it was on, the footage doesn't get released for 4 years after, so many people have forgotten about it. And it's just that's not transparency. The purpose of it is to say, hey, this is what I encountered. This is, I'm being open and honest. Here's the video in a timely manner to the public. But that's not the case a lot of, you know,
Well, yeah, and with like the body cam footage, it doesn't do any good. The public's not going to go, "Oh, well, you guys are wearing body cams," if you're still only using them internally. It's like, well, we looked at the footage and
yeah,
we promised that
yeah.
they did the right thing.
What was the point of the body cam
Okay,
then?
yeah, says you.
Or the dash cam footage? A lot of times
Yeah,
you hear the cameras are off, and in like Elijah McClain's case, like for some reason the camera fell on the ground and didn't capture anything. It's just baffling.
yeah, I don't get that. I mean, like I have a friend of mine who literally has dash cams and a back camera in his car that record every time he's in the car driving, because
You never
it's
know. Yeah.
in case anything happens, if he gets into a car accident, he's got a record of what happened. If he has any kind of run-ins with an officer, it's filmed.
Right.
It's filmed and uploaded to the cloud. It's at this point, it's not even. He's got everything paired with his phone, and everything's stored to cloud data. And if nothing happens, he gets
Yeah.
home and deletes it. If On the other hand, he also gets some really cool stuff that he puts on Facebook, where he's like, "Hey, check out what I saw while I was
Right.
driving home today." And like there was a one thing he put up. It was just a video of a bunch of turkeys that were blocking the road. And I mean, it's nothing special, it's nothing outlandish. But if he hadn't had his camera hooked up in
Yeah.
his car, we wouldn't have seen it. And it was just kind of cool because it made me realize exactly how little of a shit turkeys give. Because they were all just sitting in the road like, yeah, no, we're here. He pulls up, he's blowing his horn at them. They're just like, nope, we're good. You can wait. And he's, kind of like me, doesn't want to just run him over. So he's like inching up to him, and you can like see the turkeys just getting closer to the hood of the car, and just, nope. Here, let me hop up on your hood and stare at you real quick. I mean, it's kind of funny. But on the other hand, if this, random guy can install 2 stable cameras into his car that don't fall off and don't lose footage, it's really, why can't, publicly funded government agencies do the same thing? And he told me the setup cost him, I think it came out to be like maybe $150, because it's actually 2 cell phones that he's got mounted, one in the front and one in the back, and they were just little cheap, like prepay phones, because they don't actually have service. They just pair to his phone through the Bluetooth, and then his phone uploads the stream to the cloud. So, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I guess there's even an app for that now that turns your cell phone into a dash cam. He just didn't want to have to deal with clipping his own phone to the dash every time. So he engineered himself a whole setup. And would you like to just throw your socials out there or whatever?
Sure,
tell everybody where they can find you.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Few Apples, or on Instagram at A Few Bad Apples Pod. And or you can email me at badapplespodcast@yahoo.com.
All right, excellent, cool. Well,
thank you.
Like I said, thanks again for joining me. This was fun. And I'll be listening. And for now, like I said, that's what we had to say. Thanks for listening to another episode of I Had to Say It. If you liked what you heard, leave a review, give us a follow, give me some feedback. And if you didn't like what you heard, leave a review, give me a follow, give me some feedback. I'll try and fix it. Check us out on all the social media platforms. At I Had to Say It podcast is the trigger for all that stuff, for the search term. And if you want, check out the website, www.ihadtosayitpodcast.com. There's links to people that have been involved with the program, things I've talked about. There are some links available for some merch that we're working on, and there are ways to contact us there as well. And thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.